everybody. It's Cliff, and this is Life with MS. Hey, I'm going to tell you something today that's going to blow your mind. And if you are okay living in your little simple reality, your simulation, and you don't want to know the truth, then click away from this video now. Subscribe anyway. But I'm going to tell you some stuff that's going to change your world forever. And they're going to want to know what you know, because I'm going to tell you what I know so that you know what I know that they don't want you to know. You know? So block the signals with tinfoil or something, because this is important. Let's get started. So last night I didn't sleep a lot. I didn't know whether I should do this video or not, because, well, once this video is out, others are going to be aware. And they're going to start asking questions. And that could get me and us in a lot of trouble. But here's the thing. What if multiple sclerosis has changed human history in ways we haven't even thought about yet? And what if we have evidence of that? So I went out to find evidence that multiple sclerosis has been involved in some of the most notable events in history. And what I found is going to blow your mind. Even better, what good are theories without proof? And so what I did is I put together all this data, and what I found was rhythms and signals in the lunarverse, and it all makes sense now. But basically, what we're talking about is these conspiracies, which aren't conspiracies. These things have been covered up. Okay, so let's look at one of the most notable events in human history and how MS may have played a part. I'm not saying it did, and I'm not saying it didn't, but maybe I'm just saying, but maybe it did. It's a cold night in the North Atlantic. The year is 1912. The vessel is thought to be unsinkable, but the watchman in the bird's nest is having a terrible night with his vision.
Damn optic neuritis every time it gets cold. Iceberg, dead ahead.
All right, so here's what we know about the Titanic. We know it was from Europe. We know that most of the people that sailed on that first voyage were from Europe. And we know that Europe has a really high rate of multiple sclerosis. What if, and this is crazy, or is it, what if the people on that ship had multiple sclerosis and a combination of their symptoms led to that dreadful night in the Atlantic? Maybe I'm saying it did. Maybe I'm not saying it did. But maybe I'm just saying. And then event number 2, and no one believes this, but I'm telling you, there's evidence of this somewhere, I think. You've heard of the American Revolution, the shot heard around the world that kicked off what is basically the starting point of America as we know it today. What if on that fateful day in the battlefields of Lexington and Concord, a young soldier, a Minuteman, a militiaman, misunderstood because of cog fog or because he had muscle spasms and fired the first shot heard around the world? The year is 1775. It's April 19th, and there's a battle brewing in Lexington and Concord. One that would define history.
Do not fire men unless... Sorry guys, muscle spasm again, my bad.
And here's why I think it could have happened. A lot of the people from the colonies in that time were from Europe. Again, a place that we know now today has very high rates of multiple sclerosis. For one reason or another, we're not really sure, but we know that's a thing. So what's the possibility that people on that battlefield that day might have had multiple sclerosis and not even known it? I'd say pretty darn high, don't you? So do we have the United States of America because of multiple sclerosis? It could be. I'm not saying we do. I'm not saying we don't. But I'm just saying. All right, and here's another one that no one talks about. 1 if by sea, 2 if by land, or two if by land, one if by sea, or one if by land, two if by sea. I don't remember exactly. I got to tune my... Anyway, what if on that fateful night that Paul Revere rode out to alert everybody of what was going to happen, the impending change in the colonies, there was a young spy from the opposing army floating offshore in Boston who for a fleeting moment was affected by cog fog and couldn't remember what he was spying on and what he was supposed to tell the people what he spied on about. The year is 1775 and a young man sits in a boat off the shores of Boston. He's a spy for an opposing force and he's waiting to see what signals are being sent.
Was it one if by land, two if by sea, or two if by land and one if by sea? Thought I wrote it down.
I mean, it's possible, right? How else could you explain what happened that night? Yes, there's a lot of other things that might explain that, but really, I think multiple sclerosis had played a part, according to the research that I made up. All right, now let's move on to the next one quickly before they come. All right. Do you remember the Watergate scandal with Nixon? Yeah, okay. A handful of guys broke into an office to plant listening devices. What if the reason they were caught by the security guard on that fateful morning is because the guy that was the first one to fall in the hallway, which I couldn't find evidence of, but I'm pretty sure happened, tripped because he had foot drop, and therefore the security guard was able to catch up with him.
Get back here!
I mean, he had all the evidence right there in front of him. He had a suitcase, a briefcase, or a bag full of electronic spying bugs. And it was all there. And it just makes sense that if he didn't sleep well the night before, that his foot drop would have been just off the charts. And therefore, he couldn't have run from security. But nobody talks about this. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that MS might have been there on that fateful night with the rest of those people. Because what I don't think other people realize is those people were of a descent of a culture that had multiple sclerosis. Yeah, I found evidence of that. The 4 guys or the 5 guys or whatever they were, based on my very important research, were from families that at some point, somewhere in their history, had multiple sclerosis, we think. And that's my point. It's like, that's probably what happened. And that's probably why they got caught, because of multiple sclerosis. And that's how it changed your world today. But let's talk about one that no one else wants to talk about because, we want to pretend like MS doesn't actually exist. And all these people looked fine, so they must have been fine, right? June 6, 1944. Does that sound familiar, anyone? Well, it should, because that was D-Day during World War II. Now, I know what you're thinking right now. Oh my gosh, Cliff, are you really going to go there? Well, I told you I was going to open your eyes on what really happened here. So let's back up to June 5th, the day before the Normandy landing, where the Allies landed on Normandy Beach. Now, guess what? This was actually a surprise to the Axis forces because they thought that the Allies were landing somewhere else. And there's this whole conspiracy where the Allies made up this thing and sent out inaccurate information, and the Germans received it and thought it was the right information, and it wasn't. So they thought we were going to another beach, and so they stuck all their armed forces there. And then they realized that we were coming for Normandy too late. And by the time we landed on Normandy, they were overwhelmed. But what if it wasn't fake news that got them to go to the wrong beach? But what if it was an Axis forces general that had cog fog the night before the invasion? What if he gave the wrong information and couldn't remember the name of Normandy? And so everybody's like, well, it must be Palais, blah, 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 the other French word.
The Allies, they're headed for Pas-de-Calais, I think, or Norman, something lie. Damn this cog fog.
And so that totally changed the fate of the world. Could it be that multiple sclerosis is responsible for what we know is the free world today? Yeah, no one wants to talk about that. But that's the thing. You know, all these guys looked fine, but maybe they weren't. So on this very fatiguey Friday, I ask you to think about what other world events could have been shaped by multiple sclerosis. Comment below, because I bet there's ones I haven't even touched on yet. But you and I, we're there. But we can't let them know that we know what we know. Because if they know what we know that we know, then, well, it's not good. I'm Cliff. This is Life with MS. And until next time, if there is one, I'm out.